Well, good morning, everyone. Uh, Welcome to the study this morning. Before we begin, can you join us in a word of prayer? The dear Father in heaven, thank you for the time that we have here once again this morning to open your word together, to see wonderful things out of thy law, and to receive conviction and power in our lives to overcome the sins that so easily beset us. And we just pray, Lord, that the light that you give us uh, will shine from us to others. We thank you for this study that we've been doing in the book of Judges. We ask for your continued blessing, that your Holy Spirit can speak to us. And we pray, Lord, that each person can understand these things clearly and that they can study them out for themselves. Be with us now, we pray and ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, good morning again. Now, we have spent quite a bit of time on Judges chapter 5. And what we had done, I guess it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe even Tuesday, Monday. Can't remember when we started looking at Judges 5, but we addressed a line, and that line is the line that goes from November 9th to January 11th. And we went through these symbols that we found here in Judges chapter 5, and we saw that they fell nicely into place in the line that we created, and that this line addresses a repeat of history. That is, it's going to go over the line of Deborah and Barak, which is chapter 4, and when it repeats that history, it is doing so in a way that it's zooming into the final waymark, but it still covers that whole line. So I'll just show you here. Okay, so this is the song of Deborah and Barak, and this is the line of Deborah and Barak. So the line of Deborah and Barak is going to be addressing this Levitical chiasm, but it's going to start also with part of the 777 chiasm, that is the third group of 777 days, the fourth being from November 9th, 2019 to December 25th, 2021, and the first being starting with the Mayan calendar. So in this line of Deborah and Barak, the darkness, of course, is dealing with the organizational darkness of Parminder's movement, and basically the conflict that's going to occur. But primarily these are about this Levitical line that demonstrates that Parminder's message is error, right? So it counters Parminder's message. It ties together all these symbols from Samuel Snow's letters and events in our history. And it ends with November 9th, 2019, that closed door. So when we get to the Song of Deborah and Barak, oops, there it is. It's going to address this darkness here on September 7th, 2019. So it's going to basically go through the history of the darkness of Parminder, this conflict over the institutions, right? So we can see that that's related to the organizational darkness. So Parminder created this idea of organization, which was papal. And then they're going to come into this confrontation with FFA, with Jeff particularly, over these institutions, Lambert Church. Deborah, of course, is a B, and that's going to represent the School of the Prophets, North Bumblebee Road, and of course, FFA, the symbol of FFA, that shows up in some of these lines are 661, that is 6 is F and 1 is A. So we have all of those things happening. And then we went through this line and showed that this line addressed first the understanding of the Levitical chiasm, and then also that this line was on a line of failed predictions. And November 9th, 2019 is when the 11,900 is presented to this movement in a clear way when we're dealing with the 273, and that's on November 9th, 2019. That message gets expanded upon. First, we have the Levitical chiasm on January 11th, 2020. Jeff recognizes this importance of what Daniel Fontenot presents on that day. And that Levitical chiasm that Jeff recognizes later is going to be the model for the 777 chiasm that I present to Jeff on April 26, 2020 in an email, which he seems to ignore, even though he said he was going to watch the video that I'd made on it and read the paper that I'd written on it. He doesn't, or read what I wrote about it. He doesn't ever take that into account in any of his presentations. And then, of course, the prediction itself fails. And so its failure then is the arrival of the second angel's message. And we saw how 510 related to that. We have the symbols of the Gregorian and Julian date of July 18th. And then this movement rehearses in examining the foundations, which is what verse 11 is talking about. And that's March 7th, 2021. And then December 25th, 2021, we get the 777 from Stephen, and we get light regarding the connections between Daniel chapter 3, Daniel chapter 11, verse 1 to 4, and Revelation 17 that Colin presents, which is light, but can't be understood unless it's in the correct context. That is the light of all that we've examined since, well, at least since July 18, 2020, but even before. And we noticed that that's 1160 days from November 9th. That can represent 11/9. And of course, Stephen's birthday is going to be 30 days after the end of January 11th to the start of his birthday, which is his 54th birthday. That's 1190 days from November 9th, 2019, and Stephen was born 11,900 days prior to September 11th, 2001. So he has this 11/9 and 9/11 attached to his birthday. And then we addressed this 111, 777 days is 111 weeks. And we saw this symbol in the Song of Deborah and Barak. That's why we have January 11th, 2020 and January 11th, 2023 as waymarks. And there's some things about the number 111, which I don't know how important they are, but one is if you take the binary number 111, that's the number 7, right? If you convert it into base 10. If you convert it into base 8, it's also number 7. It's actually number 7 in anything above base 8. So that's interesting because we know if we take 111 and we put a 7 after it, we have this symbol of 1117, which we know 11 times 17 is 187. We also know 7 times 11 is 777. So within that 1111 or 111 is this symbol of 777. the other thing is we know that 7 and 6, when they come into conflict, that's the great controversy. That's the number 13, which is rebellion. If you take the number 111 just as the number 111 and you change it into, you can change its base. So I know not everybody understands about bases, but if you change it into base, to base 7, it becomes the number 216, and 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. So we have that number there connected to the number 11 by just changing it into base 7. Of course, we can see that that's another way of arranging 1117, right? 111 changed to base 7 creates 216. So we start to see that these numbers are interlocked with each other in various ways. Some of these are less important ways than others, but they're still evidences of this importance of the 111. So this is, so this is something that relates to this January 11th date, which is what the Song of Deborah and Barak is addressing. Now we remember the Song of Deborah and Barak is a zoom into the fourth waymark. That is, it's a repeat of history, the fourth waymark on the line of Deborah and Barak. So when we put the Song of Deborah and Barak, Judges 5 here, we can see we're zooming into this fourth waymark, which is January 11th, 2020 on this line. Now, the Song of Deborah and Barak is a zoom into basically September 7th, 2019, but also includes October 13th, 2019. So it includes part of that Levitical chiasm, maybe all of it. That's why Deborah and Barak has this little, the Levitical chiasm in it. We know, of course, the Judges line itself is a zoom into the arrival of the second angel in our line. But that arrival of the second angel in our line is a zoom into the Sunday law waymark. Now, so when we think about it in that way, we know that that's what we're doing here with the Judges line. But the Judges line, it's not a waymark on the big line from creation lost to creation restored, if you want to put it that way. It's not on that line. Right? That is, it's not a waymark. It is actually in that line, it's a progressive destruction of 4. That is, it's between waymarks. It's going to be between the waymark having to do with, and if I go back here, where do we have it? I thought I had that whole line here somewhere. Maybe I didn't even put it in this folder. Thought I did in this document. I might not have put it in here. So that one we'd have to go to the other lines. But anyway, the point is we're not going to do that right now. Just what I want to show is that we take this Judges line and we're applying it to our history. So when we're doing that, we're taking something that comes from the Old Testament and we're making an application of it. But that application goes from 9/11 to 2023, January 11th, 2023. And so the book of Judges keeps illustrating our history. Yeah, I don't know what to do about the pointer, Ron. I've never figured that out.
It's inside your settings. It's under your mouse.
Yeah, I tried that.
I'll show you later.
I tried that, but when I go to this program, it just goes small again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So it doesn't change it in this program. We tried that, remember?
No, I don't. I just know I keep having trouble seeing where you're at, until you start like swinging it around. So it makes,
Understand. Okay. So, so when we're dealing with Deborah and Brack, we're taking an application of history from the past, and we see that it illustrates our movement. Now, what does that mean? Like, why is that? Why can we go to the book of Judges, take the book of Judges and say it goes from 9/11 to 2023 based on Judges 2? And then why can we look at each of these judges, and why can we zoom in this way and just keep seeing more detail about our history? Why is that?
ultimately it's God's plan for us.
Okay, that's not the kind of answer I'm looking for.
Okay.
I'm looking for something else.
More tangible.
No, it's just that's like, why is the sky blue? God made it that way. That's the
Right. Okay, I get it.
right.
So I've been going over chapter 2 here recently, a
Okay.
little harder. And as I was going through it, it was only through the memories of what we had experienced that I was able to place those things, because I really didn't remember the study very well personally. But when I went back to it, I was able to, because of all the things that we have noticed and whatnot before from after that. But during that time, or during chapter 2, it became more and more relevant or apparent that it was speaking in those years, as you started traveling down through 2, going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5, and then thinking about the events that had transpired in those dates, because I've gone back and started, writing the dates down for the years, in succession, so I know what has been going on, or well, at least reminds me of what was going on. So I don't know if that is an answer that you're looking for, but that's what's
It's
got me
basically the
to.
answer I'm looking for. So
What's that?
it is the answer I'm looking for. So
Okay.
when we know that all of these things that happened before time happened for our learning, upon whom the end of the world has come, right? So
That's what we believe.
world, right? But we have to pass over the ground of fulfilled prophecy before we can see these things. And we can see that quite clearly. There's no way that we could have taken Judges chapter 2 in, in the year of 9/11, let's say, and said, oh, the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochum. This is 9/11. And this is our history, and we can just read this and see what's going to happen, right? We can't.
No, we couldn't have done that.
We actually have to pass through the history. So
yeah, that's the way it happened.
Right. So when you pass through prophecy being fulfilled, God gives you light for your feet. And so we could almost look anywhere in the Bible and find light for our feet. But now God led us to the book of Judges to do this, because we were studying the lines and we could see these patterns and structures within the lines, that they occurred in all of these stories, just as like Jeff said they did, but that they are much more detailed than we thought, and that we can zoom into each waymark and see another line. But we only can do that if we are passing over that history that line is illustrating. So, people in the past could have looked at Judges and seen their history in the book of Judges. The Millerites could have done it, and we can make applications of the book of Judges to past histories, right? Because all of those histories are God's dealings with men, and his dealings with men are ever the same. So the fact that we can do this is just the fact that we are passing through prophecy being fulfilled. And this isn't the only application that can be made of the book of Judges. It's an application that we make because we're passing through this history. But it's a solid and valid analysis of what we're experiencing, because it's based upon the Bible, it's based upon the symbols that God has given us, and it's based upon many other lines in the past, right? So when we look at June 9th to October 13th on this line of Deborah and Barak, and we see Samuel Snow's letters, that this is the Levitical chiasm, and that it fits into this story of Deborah and Barak, it's giving us I don't know the word for it, but it'd be like a key, and I can't think of really what the word for it would be like. But you can have a marking key for a test, right? Where you put it over the multiple choice test, and then you can see any place where the answer is correct. It should be the penciled out, right? And then you can mark how many a person got wrong or got right. Right. So this is kind of what we see here in these lines. They're a key that helps us to analyze things. It's an analytical tool, right? Because we are passing.
Absolutely.
So we are passing through fulfilled prophecy, and we can understand and interpret the events that are happening to us because we have this key. Now, if we don't use the key, we can be misguided in our application of where we are on these lines.
Yes.
And so this is one of the main things that I think we've come to understand since July 18, is we've understood the lines in the past better, what we were going through. But we can also see where we are and have an idea of where we're going. And so we can see when other people are misusing the lines, that is, in some cases, not really even using the lines, they're just using dates and events and symbols. We can see that they're misapplying the significance of those dates, events, and symbols. And you can't say that you're using Millerite history if you don't take all of those dates, if you can't analyze them on a line. Just because you can find spans of time and they have symbolic numbers there, those can be correct. But it doesn't mean that your understanding of that line is correct. And we need to be sure about what these lines mean. Right. So that's why I think, we can look at these lines in the way that we do. Now, I don't know if there was anything that we had to finish up. I know Dwight thought there were some things that we needed to finish up in regard to the Song of Deborah and Barak. Just that we have things at the end, which we hadn't, but we sort of started at the end. I mean, we did go through this, and then we worked our way from the beginning towards that point. The rehearsal, 5/11, March 7th, 2021, that's when we start the study examining the foundations. And December 25th, 2021, we can see that that's the second angel empowered. And then there's this year span, and this year span comes, it's going to be a deficient embolismic year. So it's 383 days. But it's 365 plus 18. And then we can see that if we take 777 times 30, or 777 times 29.530587, we get a difference of 365. And so the 777 structure has this two different ways of looking at it. So we can have this 777 days, in a sense, in a long span of time. So this 111 weeks plus a symbol of an extension that goes to January 11th, 2023. So is there anything else on this line that we need to address that we forgot, that we add to this diagram? Or I mean, I could just simply put, here, this is a deficient embolism. That might be helpful for some people to remember. Anything else before we move to Judges 5:14?
That's a little busy, but it's
Yeah,
very helpful. All the busyness is.
okay. Yeah, it's busy, but it's helpful. Okay. So
Yes.
we just wanted to put things onto that chart so that we can see them. Now we have Judges 5 verse 14 to 31. And we're going to start looking at that passage. Out of Ephraim, there was a root of them against Amalek. After the Benjamin among thy people, out of Machir came down governors, and out of Zebulun, they that handle the pen of the writer. And the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar also in Barak, and he was sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben, there were great thoughts of heart. Why abodest thou among the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flocks? For the divisions of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. Gilead abode beyond Jordan, and why did Dan remain in ships? Asher continued on the seashore and abode in the breaches. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeoparded their lives unto the death in the high places of the field. And the kings came and fought the kings of Canaan in Tanakh. By the waters of Megiddo, they took no gain of money. They fought from heaven, the stars in their courses fought against Sisera. The river of Kishon swept them away, that ancient river, the river Kishon. O my soul, thou hast trodden down strength. Then were the horse hooves broken by the means of the prancings of the mighty ones. Curse ye Meroz, or Meroz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse ye bitterly, which is a doubling, the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. Blessed above women shall Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, be. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought forth butter in a lordly dish. She put her hand to the nail, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. And the hammer she smote, and with the hammer she smote Sisera. She smote off his head when she had pierced and stricken through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay down at her feet, he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. The mother of Sisera looked out at the window and cried through the lattice, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the wheels of his chariots? His wise ladies answered her, yea, she returned answer to herself. Have they not sped? Have they not divided the prey, to every man a damsel or two? To Sisera, a prey of diverse colors, a prey of diverse colors of needlework, of diverse colors of needlework on both sides. meat for the necks of them that take the spoil. So let all thine enemies perish, O Lord, but let them that love him be as the sun when he goeth forth in his might, and the land had rest 40 years. So we've gone through this before, Judges chapter 5, right? So we've read through this, we've looked at some of the symbols. Now, what do we do with this? What do we do with this section? I'm saying that it's a line. So if it's a line, normally we have a period of darkness that's going to be mentioned.
Right?
But-
At the beginning.
Right, but this isn't going to give us specifically anything that tells us about a period of darkness. We're just going to jump into 14, and it's going to be describing the nations that are going to be fighting, like the children of Israel that are going to be fighting against Sisera, and it names names that aren't actually in the story itself. So we have to try to address why that is, and why they're mentioned when they're in the song, but not in the account.
So we know that all those things are going to be symbols to us. I mean, because all those Ishkar's got a symbol. Barak has a symbol. I mean, it goes on and on. So that's what we need to start with, is just deciphering the symbols.
Okay, so we need to decipher the symbols, and we know that these are names of the tribes of Israel for the most part, right?
Right.
You have some other names in there. And just trying to find something here. So, Now Ephraim. So when we look at this story, okay, let's try to list off all of these names. We have Ephraim, right? That's one of the tribes. Benjamin, Zebulun. Now it mentions Maker. Who's Maker or Machir? What is Machir?
If you
It
look,
actually says salesman. That's what the 4353 says. It's a salesman.
Okay.
but
What does that mean?
Yeah.
if you take this according to the rule of first mention, Machir is one of the grandsons of Joseph, and we find that in Genesis 50:23.
Yeah. Yeah. So Genesis 50:23 is going to, at the death of Joseph, right? So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought up upon Joseph's knees. So
That's the third generation then, Machir.
yeah, Joseph, Manasseh, and then Machir, right? Yeah, so that's his grandson. And now why he's called sold, I don't know. But that's what his name means. I don't think it means salesman. I mean, it can be salesman. It's from the word salesman. But maybe Machir is sold and salesman is this word. I don't know.
So yeah, the BD.
I'd have to look at the Hebrew
definition is sold. That's that Brown Drivers Briggs.
Yeah, but that doesn't tell you the form of the word,
No.
right? Because because you're just looking up the Hebrew number.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the Hebrew numbers. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, and here it's just Makir. It's not in any sort of, so that is what's there. And I'd have to look it up in another form.
So if we're looking at this, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin
Right.
are all of the sons of Rachel.
Okay.
And then is Zebulun the last of the sons of Leah?
I can tell you in a second here. Yep.
So is this repeating the sons of Israel in reverse order?
That's what it looks like it's doing. Yeah, here. So let's get back here. So they're going to start, of course, with Joseph, Ephraim, Manasseh, right?
Well, we're seeing the doubling, Ephraim, Manasseh, and then we have this with Benjamin as well. So all of this being Rachel's children, and then we come to this with Zebulun. And this is in the 5th stanza of this song.
All of this is the 5th stanza, you're saying.
Well, I'm from verse 14 to 18 is the 5th stanza.
Okay. So we've got Ephraim, Benjamin, Mechir is Manasseh, right? So it doesn't mention Manasseh. And then you got Zebulun, so the last son of Leah.
Right. And so in the alternate reading, it would be out of Ephraim, there was a root of them against Amalek. After thee, Benjamin, among thy people, out of Machir came down governors, and out of Zebulun, they that draw with the pen of the writer.
Yeah, which there's a bunch of symbolism in here, especially when you look at the Hebrew.
Right.
Okay, and then so Issachar is the next one, right? So if we're going backwards, Benjamin, Joseph, which is, of course, Joseph he has Manasseh and Ephraim, and then you have Zebulun, and then you have Issachar. Now it's going to mention Zebulun again later, but then it's going to go to Reuben, right? So it's going to go to the eldest.
But at this point, weren't Ephraim, Benjamin, Manasseh, Zebulun, weren't those, along with Issachar, weren't those the ones that joined in this battle, and then the rest of them did not?
Right. So now the rest didn't, but they're going to mention. I'm just trying to see which ones they don't mention. They don't mention Judah, I don't think. Just looking here, because I looked at the list before, and they don't mention Levi or Simeon. Maybe I'm just trying to look through this quickly. So there's some that aren't mentioned.
Right.
Dan's mentioned, Asher's mentioned, Reuben's mentioned. Right.
So Judah and Levi were not mentioned, so that's 3 and 4. Sons number 3 and number 4 that are not mentioned, correct?
Well, and Simeon's not mentioned, so 2, 3, and 4.
All right.
So only the first and the last 2 sons of Leah are mentioned. And Gad isn't mentioned. I don't see Gad.
Okay,
But Asher is. So they have the last son of Zilpah, because Gad is of Zilpah. And then they mention both Dan and Naphtali. So both of Bilhahs are mentioned. So why that is, I don't know. So that means we don't have Simeon, Levi, Judah, or Gad mentioned. So that's 4 of the 12. Sons not mentioned. Of course, Levi's not reckoned among the tribes. So, I mean, there's 12 tribes. Technically, there's 13. So if you take away the 4, you end up with, you get 9 of them mentioned, I guess.
now it's interesting because we have this in Judges 5:17. It mentions Gilead. And yet Gilead was a son of Machir.
Yeah, so that's right, which is, and I think that's why Machir is mentioned here. Yeah, so there's 8 of the sons mentioned specifically, I guess, but Joseph is 2, right? So he has Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, so anyway, that's dealing with the names. And anything else that we should look at first?
Is it the names that are important, or is it the symbols of the sons that's important here?
Well, it's the symbols, right? I mean, the names themselves are going to have symbols attached to them, right? So we're going to have
Double fruit for Ephraim. Right? Isn't that what it said?
yeah, but well, that might be important, the meanings of their names. But I'm thinking like the numbering of their names of the tribes, the Hebrew numbers themselves,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then their history, of course, is other things that are going to be
Right.
addressed.
So when you're speaking of in that nature, are you talking like the gematria numbering?
Yeah, so we got the gematria, both English and Hebrew. We have the Hebrew, Strong's Hebrew numbers attached to those names that we could look at.
Okay, so we just go
And
through
also-
a systematic examination of each
Right.
one.
And then, of course, the numbering of the tribes themselves in Joshua.
Right, I mean the numbers, yeah, that they had when they made the or before the crossing or after the crossing.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first time they're numbered and the last time they're numbered. So all of those things can be applied here as symbols to understand where we place them on a line. So, this though is going to start because we're saying this is a line. I mean, we're just saying it is. We haven't drawn it out yet. We haven't looked at it yet. But we're saying that just like we have with the Song of Deborah and Barak is the 4th waymark in the line of Deborah and Barak, we're saying that this part is the 4th waymark in the line of the Song of Deborah and Barak, right? That is, we just said that it is. Now, maybe it's different in what this line is or what it represents. Maybe there's, so one of the things we put in the Song of Deborah and Barak, we put this waymark there, the fourth, and we said it's the close of probation, and it's chapter 5, verse 14 to 31. So that's what we said. Whether that's correct or not, we don't know, but that's what
That's what was proposed.
that's what was proposed, right? And instead of me working it all out and showing you what I found out, we're doing this together, right? That's how we're doing it. So we're looking at it. We might have looked at it on our own. Obviously, I have some ideas of what this might mean, but sometimes when I come with the ideas of what I think, we end up going in a totally different direction. We find, what God is leading us to. So the one thing we don't have is we don't have a defined period of darkness in those verses, other than the history that precedes it. Now, if we look at a line, any line, we know that we have a falling away that occurs at an end of a line. That is, you have a disappointment, then you have a falling away, and then you're going to have what we often call a failed reform line. That is, the fourth is going to be the first generation in every other line. The first generation, and it's going to have a failed reform line, but then after 4 generations, you're going to have a major reform line. So in Millerite history, you have the third angel's message arrives, October 22, 1844. And then you have that immediate history of a reform line, which is the development of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in that first generation from 1844 to 1888. And in that history, the first, second, and third angels' messages are going to be rejected. But what happens in that history typifies our time, because we are in the period of the fourth angel arriving, right? That is, that history right after reform line is a typical history. Now, A.T. Jones is a part of that. Right, he's going to be there, and then we can zoom into A.T. Jones' history, 1888, and when you zoom into 1888, the General Conference bulletin articles that we're looking at, they're actually addressing that history, and he's paralleling this history. This is the Friday night studies, where the mighty angel of Revelation came down, Revelation 18 came down. That's what Jones says, that they're in the Sunday law and the period of the mark of the beast, and all those things that we said about our line, Jones is in that. But his history is typifying our history. Now, when I say our history is the history of the Sunday law. But within the history of the Sunday law, we have this movement that has a history. And that's what we're studying. We're studying the history of this movement and its role and its place in Bible prophecy, so that we can know what our history means, why our movement was raised up, and what our responsibility is, and what we're going to do about that. So those are the things that we're studying here in looking at this. Now, I'm saying that this is a close of probation. That is, it's typifying the close of probation. It's not the close of probation. It is, we're not saying that we're looking at the waymark that is the close of probation on the big line. That's not what we say that we're studying here in Judges 5, verse 14 to 31. We're studying a close of probation in this line. Now, we have a close of probation at waymark number 7. Why am I putting a close of probation at waymark for AA, waymark number 8? Why would I do that if we already had the close of probation in waymark 7? Am I wrong in doing that?
I don't think you're wrong in that because we're talking about a different line at this point. We're looking at a zoom in too, right?
Okay. So think about Ellen White's line. Look at this line as the Song of Deborah and Barak, and imagine that's Millerite history. And we have the third angel arrive October 22nd, 1844. And Ellen White sees the mighty angel of Revelation 18 coming in this history connected with the close of probation, right? The Sunday law history.
Right.
Okay. So that's the parallel that I'm making. I'm saying that you have a close of probation, October 22, 1844. But that close of probation isn't the close of probation for the end of the world. It's the close of probation for those who had rejected the second angel's message.
That time frame.
Right? They come to their disappointment. They show their characters. Now you're going to have this new movement. But Ellen White sees the Sunday law, and the Sunday law, Revelation 18, is addressing the close of probation for the world, not necessarily the first few verses. But it is, if you read through Revelation 18, it's the story of the end of the world, the Sunday law and its aftermath. Now, just a thought that's just a bit of an aside of that. You know, in the book of Revelation, we have Revelation, what's Revelation 16?
The seven last plagues,
Yes, the seven last
the
plagues.
threefold union.
Right. So the seven last plagues come after the close of probation. So why do we have Revelation 18 as the Sunday law if the plagues are already mentioned in 17? And then, or 16, and then we have 17. We have again. Can we see that in the book of Revelation, this idea of repeat and enlarge is really just the fact that we're looking at different lines at different times, illustrating the same history?
Yeah, that is more than probable.
Yeah, and that we've never really understood that. I mean, we sort of on one level understood that it's a repeat of history, but the book
Would
of
you call it a reiteration?
well, a repeat and enlarge, yeah. Right, each of these stories repeats upon the previous one different details, but leads to the same end.
Kind of like
But it's-
Daniel.
Yeah. And so it's progressing. The lines progress, and when you have a line, each line overlaps the other one that is there. One is a zoom into some particular aspect of something. So we know we in a sense have a close of probation, chapter 16, but we have a close of probation, chapter 17. We have a close of probation, chapter 18, right? We keep having these close of probations. And even before that, right? So we have these things that repeat themselves in the book of Revelation. You can put Revelation 7 and 14 together, both talking about the 144,000. Now, I'm saying here that in Judges chapter 5, verse 14 to 31, that this is about the close of probation, but a close of probation within this movement that's typical of the close of probation at the end of the world. And one is you're going to have these tribes, the 144,000 being mentioned. Right? It's not going to mention all of them. Right? It's going to be a different list than you see in Revelation 7. I mean, so we need to understand why that is, why it's illustrating it in this way. Okay, so we know we have to look at all of these names. We have to try to figure out what those names mean symbolically in all the different ways that we can examine names. Now, we also have to look at all the words, right? And see the symbols that are there and apply them as we've been doing in the book of Judges. So let's look at verse 15, for instance. So we're going to start here. So we have Ephraim. Ephraim is, it's the double portion, basically, is what his name is referring to. That's why the double fruit. The word there, it's plural, is what we call the dual plural, ayin, right? And then we have it says double ash heap as well. I shall be doubly fruitful. We know that he's the second son of Joseph, but he's given preference over Manasseh. Now the word that it comes from, Ephrath, fruitfulness. We know Bethlehem is also called Bethlehem Ephratah, but that's just because it's Bethlehem connected with Ephraim. Okay, and then we got, that's just putting it in the gematria.
Yes, sir.
So you put Ephraim as the English word, I would assume, because that's all he has.
Yes, sir. I took it straight out of chapter 5.
Right. Okay, and so the significance here, you have lots of different things. So when you put things in at the palmoni.org gematria calculator, you can see you have just the sum of those letters is 70. And then they multiply them. You get a product, 1347840. And then you get a reverse sum. The reverse sum's interesting because it's 11.9. Okay.
That was an interesting one. That caught my eye. 70 and 111.9 both caught my eye.
And then you have a reverse product, which is a really large number. And then you have a combined, that is, if you take 70 plus 11.9, you get 189, which reminds us of 1989, right? And then you can also subtract them. You get a differential, which is 49, which is 7 times 7. Right. And of course, that can be a bit of a shorthand for the 777 structure of a line. Right. So it looks to me, just based upon the name Ephraim, that we're tied to November 9th, 2019, September 11th as well, and also to the 11.9 in 1989. So we're tied to this structure. It's just symbols of the structure of our lines. That's basically what we would say that the name Ephraim has. Now in Hebrew, it's Aleph. You got all these letters. Can't think of the name of that letter. Resh, Yod, and Mem. I always just look at the letter. So I'm going to take this and put this in a gematria calculator that uses Hebrew.
Where's that tool?
Gematrix.org.
Okay.
Gematrix.org.
Gematrix.org. Okay.
Yeah. And all that does gives you the Hebrew gematria. So just the Hebrew letters, what they're worth. Aleph is worth 1. What's the letter there? Peh. 80. Resh, 200. Yod is 10. And Mem is 40, right? So you add it together, you get 331. So it doesn't do the multiplication, but I can easily do that. And that's simply 8 times 2 times 4. which gives me the number 64. So, and it doesn't give me a reverse or anything like that. So whether,
Not seeing too much there, eh?
no, not really. I mean, I see 331, and that could be a date like March 31st, but I don't have anything for that. Just could be 13, March 13th, or the 13th day of the third month. Right. So, so I don't know. Right. But we look at it. So we look at all these different symbols.
It's process of elimination, you have to go through it systematically and able to eliminate stuff or advance certain things.
Yeah. So anyway, we look at Ephraim and we have symbols with Ephraim. Now it says out of Ephraim, there was a root of them against Amalek. So this is Amalek is the Amalekites. Now, who is the enemy in this story? The story of Sisera. It has to do with the king of the Canaanites, with Eglon, right? So, so when it's talking about out of Ephraim, there was a root of them.
With Jabin.
What's that?
With Jabin.
Jabin, is that it? Jabin.
Barak and Deborah.
Yeah, Jabin. Okay, I thought the name wasn't right. So Jabin, king of Canaan. That's right. Okay, thanks for correcting me there. Okay, so we have Jabin, king of Canaan, and that's the enemy that they're attacking. But here it's going to talk about Amalek. So what is this story of Ephraim and Amalek? Why is this mentioned? What is this referencing? Now, here is just a modern translation of this verse. From Ephraim, their root, they marched down into the valley, following you, Benjamin, with your kinsmen. From Maker marched down the commanders, and from Zebulun, those that bear the lieutenant's staff. So it's it's a bit of an interpretation to some degree. Another translation says troops came from Ephraim, where Amalekites once lived. Others came from Benjamin. Officers and leaders came from Machir and Zebulun. And the Young's literal translation, out of Ephraim, their root is against Amalek. After thee, Benjamin, among thy peoples, out of Machir came down lawgivers, and out of Zebulun, those drawing with the reed of a writer. So we're going to get quite, could Amalek refer to Dan backbiting, attacking the weak? So that's when, okay, can you expand on that more, what you mean, how that would refer to Ephraim? Do you have the next one?
No, I just thought it might be referring to the backbiting and the gossip that's rampant in the group.
Okay, maybe. Now, so Amalek means dweller in the valley, right? So that's why one of the translations says they went out down into the valley. Instead of using the word name Amalek as a name, they just used it as the dwellers of the valley. Okay, and when it comes to Amalek, as far as, it shows up in the Bible, lots of different places. It's first mentioned in Genesis 36:12, 36:16. It's in the Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And mentioned here in Judges. Right. Now the other thing about Amalek, because I'm going to say that this is referring to Amalek, not just the dwellers in the valley. But the question is, why are they going to mention Amalek in this context when we're talking about Sisera and Jabin, king of Canaan? So we have Ephraim, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Zebulun. And the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar, and also Barak. He was sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben, there were great thoughts of heart. So we don't even know what that means yet. So remember, this is a song and it's recounting some history. And it has to mean something.
So I'm going through, I did a search on Ephraim and Amalek combined,
Yeah.
and I came up with Judges 5:14, which is what we're studying,
Yeah.
and also Judges 12:15.
So in 12:15,
That's Abandon, the son of Hillel.
Hillel, the Pirathonite, died and was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim in the mount of the Amalekites. So the mount of the Amalekites is in Ephraim. So why is that?
Well, evidently Ephraim displaced the Amalekites.
Yes, right? So
When did they do that? If we go back, I did another search again for Amalekite or Amalek, and I popped up with the several hits, and this is the guy that Moses stood on top of the mount with his hands raised up, right? When they fought them.
who's the guy?
Amalek.
They were
Amalek
fighting.
was
They were fighting against the Amalekites. That's what you're saying.
Well, I did a search on Amalek.
Yeah.
And it comes up with a bunch of stuff. But one of the things that I noticed was that it looks like Moses stood on top of a mountain and held his arms up while they battled.
Right. So this is Exodus chapter 17.
Right.
Okay. So this first you're going to have this water from the rock, and then you have Israel defeats Amalek. Then there came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. So right, so this is one of their places in their wilderness wanderings. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out of men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. And so Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the mount. It came to pass when Moses had held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. And Moses' hands were heavy. And they took a stone and put it under him. And he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, one on the one side, the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. For he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Right? So this brings us to this battle. How does this relate then to what we're looking at in Judges dealing with Amalek? So Amalek is this continual enemy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we know in the story of Judges that we keep running into Ephraim. And what is Ephraim in the story of Judges?
Um,
Tribe who complained they hadn't been called to battle when they were.
Right. So they're always going to be complaining. Now it says, out of Ephraim there was a root of them against Amalek. Now, so the word root can mean bottom, deep, heel, root. It's from 8327. Sharash. And it's mentioned in Job and in Psalms and Isaiah, that word itself, the root one. When we look at 8328, it's also translated root. So it says here, lest there should be among man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turneth away this day from the Lord our God to go serve the gods of these nations, lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. So that's Deuteronomy 29:18. The next time is Judges 5:14. Right, that word root is used. So when it talks here, out of Ephraim there was a root. Could this be a root of bitterness? But it says it's against Amalek. Now, I'm just going to look at the Hebrew here. Now, I don't know why they say against, because that's not what it says in Hebrew. It says in Amalek. Ba'amalek. It has a bet at the beginning. So would this not say rather that there's this root of bitterness in Ephraim that is the same root of bitterness in Amalek? I mean, I see why they're translating it this way, because they're looking at this as the story of this battle. So, Ephraim's not particularly involved. Right. So, I mean, in this battle in chapter 4, we have Zebulun and Naphtali, right? They're going to be the ones that join with them. And then you're going to have, let me see, is there any other? Yeah, so we don't even have anyone else mentioned, right? Other than Barak is from which tribe? Which tribe are these? We know that Deborah dwells between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. But she's going to call Barak out of Kadesh Naphtali, city of Naphtali. And you're going to have Naphtali and Zebulun. So what is this about Ephraim in verse 15? Or verse 14, I mean. So it says literally from Ephraim, a root in Amalek. That's why they put of them against Amalek, but against is not in the Hebrew, just of Amalek.
Yeah, kind of sounds, the way you put it like that, it sounds like it might be saying just that. That he's comparing Ephraim to Amalek
Right. And
as being basically the same character.
yeah, of the same character. Now we have this word after. So after the Benjamin, Hosea 9 verse 6, Ephraim is smitten, their root is dried up. Okay. So Hosea 9:16, was it 9:16? So that's a root connected to Ephraim. And then I need to look at the Hebrew. So after the after them in Benjamin. My people. Okay. Out of Ephraim there was a root of them against Amalek. After the Benjamin among thy people, out of Machir came down governors. Now we know governors refers to scribes who write on metal tablets. So that's Manasseh. And out of Zebulun, they that handle the pen of the writer. Okay, just hang on a sec here. I'll be right back. You guys can talk. Okay, nobody said anything. So what do we do with these things? So we have this root out of Ephraim. We have Benjamin, the son of the right hand, who's among the people or in the people. And then we have Machir. He's going to come down, and this word governors, to be ascribed by implication to enact, laws being cut in stone or metal tablets in primitive times. But we can connect this to the writing out of the lines, right? And out of Zebulun, habitation, a son of Jacob, also his territory and tribe. So it means a habitation. they that handle the pen of the writer. So you have writing on metal tablets. So how do we address this? We're going to say that this is on a line. We've got one verse. We hardly understand what it means. We just have these symbols. Now, if we look at these different tribes, so we could look up Amalek as a name. Now, did we have anything, just the basic gematria on this verse?
We didn't complete it. We just got like Ephraim and that was it.
Yeah. Okay. We just did Ephraim. Arand, you got any information on this verse that's interesting? There's some stuff in the chat dealing with Issachar and Jeremiah 6:6.
Where does it say metal tablets? Where does it say that?
Okay, so governors, that word governors has to do with says a primitive root. It's a kakak, properly to hack, that is engrave, to be a scribe, simply by implication to enact laws being cut in stone or metal tablets in primitive times, or generally prescribe, appoint, decree, governor, grave, lawgiver, note, portray, print, set. So whatever we can say about this is that we have these groups of people at this time on this line. You have some that there was a root in Amalek, and then you have the son of the right hand. So after the son of the right hand among the people, and then from Machir, right? So Machir is sold. Ephraim and Amalek both have a reverse sum of 11:9. Okay, so that's interesting, right? So both these words, Ephraim and Amalek, have this 11:9. Now, so can we put this at 11:9 where we have this division that occurs in the movement? But we also have these things written on a line, right? That is, we have Machir came down governors, right? So we're going to say that this is the line. This is dealing with the 25-20 structures. Psalm 45:1, the tongue, teaching, legislating, comparing, compared to a pen of a ready writer. Psalm 45 is also a victory song, right? So we can see that we've taken this history and we've placed it on a line. Now Zebulun, we say out of Zebulun. So what did we have with Zebulun? That they that handle the pen of a ready or the pen of a writer. Because we've already addressed Zebulun. Zebulun's going to be this period of time, the number of days. What is it, 57,400 days from the organization of the Adventist Church in 1863 to July 18, 2020. So do we have at 11:9 on November 9th, 2019, do we have a line pointing to July 18? We do, right, with Zebulun.
Right.
Okay.
15,000 some days, wasn't it?
57,400 days, I believe.
57,000, that was it.
Yeah, so that's the numbering of the tribe of Zebulun. That goes from May 23rd, 1863 to July 18, 2020. Okay, so we're taking our time here, but we have that with Amalek. What about Makir? What does his name yield in Gematria? And Zebulun himself. Makir reverse sums 110. Normal sums 52. Combined 162, differential 58. And Zebulun the reverse sum is 88. Combined is 189. Normal sum is 101. And the differential is 13. Whatever that means. But so far we've been looking at the reverse sums. So if we take the reverse sums as being 11, 9, 88, what's the significance of 88 in our lines and symbols? Like, how are we using it? So Jeff used 88, 2 8s, the number 8.
So that was the days for the divorcement, was it?
8 8. Well, okay, yeah. So it was the number of days from the first day of the 10th month to
That's right, to
the
the
first month.
fourth, right? First day of the fourth month.
Which is interesting because the normal sum there is 101, which can represent the first day of the 10th month, the 10th day of the first month. It also can represent the first day of the first month. And then the reverse sum is 88, the number of days from the first day of the first month to the first day of the 10th, or the first day of the 10th month to the first day of the first month. So yeah, so we can see that these symbols here are relating to our lines, but we should be able to place Judges 15, 14, and probably we will see that we can take verse 15 and put all of those at 11, 9. Right. So that's what I believe that we will find when we start going through these lines. So we're almost out of time here. Right. So we're going to see that there's all these symbols in these that help us place it on a line. Yeah. So the 8 days, that has to do with 2 Chronicles 29. And now the other thing just before we finish is Issachar. Issachar is 3458 in the Hebrew, or it's 3485. Is that what it is? I think we'll come to these numbers here later. We'll start to see the significance of these numbers. We already looked at Barak's name and Deborah's name, but we got Issachar's name as well. Okay. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for the time here this morning. We know that we're moving very slowly, but we ask, Lord, that you can help us in our personal study to look at these things and help us to understand them. Be with us throughout this day. We ask for your angels to watch over us. and that you can bring us together to study your word according to thy will. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.